Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Miguel Iturrate back here on the Lights Out podcast. MMA detective Mike Davis off to the side here, and joining us for another deep dive, current active UFC roster fighter, Jarod Gordon. And Lytle will be joining us. Chris Lytle will be joining us down the line here during the interview. Hopefully he gets free from some BKFC responsibilities. So Mike, take it away.
So Jarod Gordon, current UFC fighter. Your story has got like a crazy path with a lot of twists and turns. Most people think when a fighter gets to the UFC, everything was just kind of, I'm not going to say easy, but it's just kind of systematic. And the way you reached the finish line was probably different than anybody else on that entire UFC roster. So why don't we start from the beginning? Where did you grow up? A lot of street fights, things of that nature?
Yeah, so I grew up for the first half of my life in Nassau County in Long Island, New York. I then later moved to Queens, New York. But I grew up in a nice area, man. Really nice area, wealthy, North Shore of Long Island. My father is a business owner. He's not a white collar, but he's, blue collar business. But he did really well. I lived in a big house. We had a pool. My dad always had like 3 cars. I never had to have a single thing. I was very fortunate and lucky. That's not to say that there wasn't stuff that went on in that house, that definitely affected me and things that I saw. But we happened to have money. And I think, my dad wouldn't come home a lot. And that was like the start of like how my life kind of, started going like dark, He wouldn't come home. He was out all the time. He was alcoholic, a big coke user. My mom, I had 2 brothers. So my mom, she was like a Sicilian girl from Queens, New York. She married my father. She was 23. And, she didn't have a college education. She had nowhere to go. So she kind of had to stay with my dad, What was she going to do? Pick up and leave with 3 boys,
Yeah.
And, I used to always wonder, like, where the fuck is my dad? How come he doesn't come home at night? And at first, I would ask my mom, and she would say, oh, he's working, he's business meetings. And then eventually it came to the point where it was just like, your father's out. Yeah, he's a loser, and I started realizing, all right, my dad, has a drinking problem, and he doesn't come home at night for days at a time.
So how old are you when that all clicked with you?
6, 7, I started to realize.
That's rough.
Yeah. And he did it for years, pretty consistently. And, he was cheating on my mom. He was out there doing whatever. But I used to get, like, curious. So my mom, I would always ask her, what is he doing? And she would say, he's driving around. And I would be like, what the fuck? What do you mean he's fucking driving around? He's driving around for fucking hours? It's like, so, like, I started to get curious. And when he would finally come home and go to sleep, I would go into his car and, like, look around, and it was, like, cigarettes. And I would find, like, I was like 6, 7 years old doing this. I would find, like, little, like, white dots all over the place on the steering wheel, like on the floor, around the cars, the driver's seat, and the cup holder and stuff. And I would, like, smell it, and I would taste it. My lips would get numb. And at first I was like, what is this stuff, And then like I finally like I started finding like rocks, you know, like my dad, I guess was, you know, he would go out and then on his way home, he would be, you know, sniffing coke.
Sloppily.
And yeah, I don't think he cared. Luckily, he never got pulled over, fucking guy, or got caught, I should say. But you know, as I got older, I started realizing, oh, that was cocaine this whole time. So you know, I'm 6, 7 years old. I'm ingesting cocaine.
That's incredible.
Yeah, young, you know, like basically like almost infant, you know, like. And then, so we used to go to sleepaway camp, me and my older brother. Well, we went for 2 years, and one summer I went to camp, and while I was there, you know, I always mention this, you know, at AA or when I share at places, because I know, looking back at it now, that it directly affected my life, or completely affected my life and made me self-medicate and do the things, you know, that I ended up doing. But I was sexually assaulted by a male counselor.
And how old are you at that time?
I was like 8 years old, just about to turn 9. Full on rape. Yeah, I can still remember the smells, the tastes. Not to get too graphic, but the way I remember it, you know.
You know, Jarod, I think the one thing that an incident like that affects somebody is, one, you put up like a barrier later on in life, like in your teen years. But what you failed to do is you failed to realize that you were an 8-year-old child. You were innocent, defenseless, but you see yourself at 15 or 16 as that same person. And like, how could I let that happen to me?
Yeah.
And it's real difficult to kind of digest that you're a different person, even though you're the same person, when something like that takes place.
Yeah. And I was, you know, super confused. I was like, all right, like, did I do something wrong?
Did you ever tell anybody about it?
Eventually, when I was 23, I wound up telling you.
Jesus.
So, and I'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was like, hey, now, because of this, like, did I, you know, like, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with me? And, you know, I was confused. And then I remember, you know, I came home from camp that year. I didn't tell anyone. You know, scared. And I remember like being in class that fall, you know, like, and I would be daydreaming about it. And the teachers used to be like, Jarod, like, are you all right? And I'd be like, oh yeah, you know, just thinking about the time I got raped. Now that I look, you know, I can laugh at it now, but like looking back at it, it was pretty fucking sick, you know? And then that's when everything just started to go downhill for me. Like I was just, you know, I didn't want to study. I didn't want to pay attention in class. I was acting out. And I didn't give a fuck anymore, you know? Hold on a second. Steady. Can you lower it a little? Sorry. So I got older, you know, time went by, and
did you start like drinking at an early age as well?
Oh yeah. So within a couple of months after that assault, I have an older brother, Dylan, who's also in recovery. And we had family friends who were like 2-3 years older than us. So they were like 13 or 12, 13, maybe a little older, and they were smoking pot and stuff. And we used to hang out every day, you know, all of us. And naturally, I'm hanging out with them. I'm going to do the same thing, you know? So I started smoking pot. I was 9 years old. Drink.
That's nuts.
I know, I remember being that age and thinking like, oh, this is normal. And then now, like, looking back at it, I'm like, holy shit, fucking 9 years old. Like, what 9-year-old snorts pot?
Jesus.
And my parents were, were potheads. So there was and my friends, kids that I grew up with were smoking pot. And there was pot everywhere for me at that age. By the time I was 11, I was smoking pot every day. And by the time I was 13, I had my first encounter with cocaine, and I remember sniffing a line in the back of my friend's Jeep Grand Cherokee. I had a lot of older friends in my life that were terrible influences on me, and I remember sniffing it and thinking, oh, that's what that taste is from when I was a child, and thinking oh yeah, I've already done this. And at that age I was influenced, and I don't like to glorify it, but I was selling, drugs, selling pot, selling coke. And then so that same year, my father's business, it burnt down and killed a bunch of firemen in New York City and injured 60 guys. It was called the Father's Day Fire. It was the deadliest fire in New York City history since 1969. And then 9/11 happened. That was 2001. And then 9/11 happened a couple months later. And
holy shit.
It took the cake. But yeah, my father's business was in Long Island City, which is right on the East River between Queens and Manhattan. And I remember, watching it burn down. We rushed into the city. It was Father's Day. It was a Sunday. My dad gets a call. The store's on fire. We get there. The whole thing's exploded. People dead. People injured. And I remember thinking, what the fuck? And my dad lost millions of dollars, and we moved to Queens. That's when we moved to Queens to be closer, because my dad was trying to rebuild the business and couldn't afford to live where we were living anymore. So my whole life flipped. I went from living in the North Shore of Long Island, predominantly white. It was either you were Italian or Irish, a Catholic Italian Irish, or you were just a Jew, white Jews, rich, wealthy people, and then I moved to Queens, and also when I was going to high school across the street from Queens Bridge Housing Projects, which is the largest housing projects in the country, so my whole world flipped. It was a weird time in my life, and I used it as a reason to rebel. Oh, I don't want to move to fucking Queens.
Now at this point, do you and your father kind of strike up a close relationship at all, or is it still?
My dad's the man. He's still around. He's still my parents never got divorced. He cleaned his act up. He just fucked around too much at one point. Well, my dad, I fucking love my dad, and. Cool. We've always been close. He's been close with me and all my brothers, and my mother too. She still loves him. They went through some tough times, but they got through it.
Let me ask you. You were doing drugs at a young age, and a lot of the time your dad was partying too. But a lot of the times, a guy who parties comes down really hard when he catches his kid. They never caught you dabbling, or they just kind of blocked it out.
I was smoking pot with my parents when I was 12 years old.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, we were all smoking. My whole family was fucking potheads or alcoholics. So everyone drank and smoked together,
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't I've actually done cocaine with my father.
Oh my God.
In Miami. Yeah, we were in Miami. My dad was like, hey, look what I got. I'm like, all right, well, fucking break it out.
Yeah, I've done it with the in-laws, not my parents, but the in-laws, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not normal, but you know, for us it was. So anyways, I moved.
So when does it start kind of getting out of control for you?
But wait, hold on. When did fighting come in? Are you street fighting?
Yeah.
You know, while you're dealing, are you like known as a tough guy? Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, I got into a lot of fights. I got my ass kicked probably more than I did when until I got older. I got beat up a lot. I would start fights with older guys. I would get beat up, you know, weapons. I got stabbed at one point in like my neck. Not like too bad, but you know, I've been hit with all sorts of shit. I got scars all over my head, mostly from street fighting, not from real fighting. But yeah, it was what we did as kids. You know, we fought the kids from the other schools. Like it's just what we did. You know, like, oh, who the fuck are those kids? And we're at the park. Like, all right, well, I guess we have to fight them. And you know, that's what we did. And like, we prided ourselves in that. You know, we loved it. But that's what we did as kids from New York. Like everyone did it. And you know, people would be like, fucking, what are you idiots doing? You know, and like, we never got in trouble really until we got older. Things started to get a little more serious. But you know, at 13, 12, 13, 14, 15, like we were just being kids. I did get arrested for a couple of assaults though as I got older. But you know, and then it became more of like we sold a lot of drugs, me and my friends, and you know, we would get in trouble for, you know, possessions, and you know, we robbing people for their drugs and just like stupid shit, like, you know, stupid kid shit, nothing crazy. We sold a lot of pot. I sold a lot of pills, a lot of pain pills, you know, doctor shopping. I don't know if you got, you know, obviously, you know.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, it's
thousands of pills.
Yeah, but you're talking about a life of somebody that, you know, usually ends up on the street.
Oh, I did end up homeless eventually. I mean, so, you know, I thought, all right, so let me go back a little bit. When I was younger and I was going to high school, before I was like a complete drug addict, I was smoking pot and doing other drugs, but I didn't find like my drug of choice, which eventually became opiates. I always get this feeling like in my gut. I remember like taking the subway to school in Queens, and I would have my headphones on, and I would be listening to like Nas or 50 Cent or some shit, and I should be thinking like, I don't go to school, like fucking hate school. And I always used to have this feeling like there was something bigger for me. I was gonna do something bigger. And like I knew it wasn't school. I knew I didn't want to go to college like the rest of America was doing. You know, you go to high school and then go to college and get a job. Like, and I'm like, at the time I was like, I know what I got to do. I got to sell like as much drugs as possible, and then like open a business or something. And I thought like I would be like a drug kingpin, and I did well. Actually, I had made a lot of money, and I remember I was like 20 years old or 19 years old, and I had like $150,000 in cash. And I remember thinking like, yo, I'm never going to be poor again. Until I found opiates, and I ended up losing, you know, spending all my money, and you know, I ended up homeless. I panhandled.
Oh,
I broke into houses. You know, I slept on the street. I slept in parks. I slept in my car.
yeah, it's miserable. So when do you start training?
So I graduated high school, and I actually got into into college. I did apply for college, and I was going to go to a really good school for pharmacy. I was going to become a pharmacist.
It's good thinking, man. Good thinking.
Yeah, so and I actually worked at a pharmacy when I was like 16, 17. And at the time, I used to steal like all the Xanax and all the pills. And I used to think, yo, I'm gonna become a pharmacist and I'm gonna be fucking rich. Like, I'm gonna fucking have all these drugs and do whatever I want. But when I graduated, it was summertime, and I'm like, yo, I wanna. And at the time, the Ultimate Fighter was really big. It was 2007. Ultimate Fighter was huge. Frankie Edgar was my favorite fighter. I remember watching him fight Tyson Griffin in his first UFC fight.
That was a crazy fight.
And thinking, holy shit, bro, if this little guy can do this, so could I, you know? And so I graduated high school. I'm 17. And I come out of the subway one day and I look up and there's a gym called Combined Martial Arts, home of the Rhino fight team. It was actually an affiliate of where.
And just to kind of quantify, at this time, like around that period, Rhino fight team had like 30, 35 like professional fighters. Like they were probably the biggest fight team in that area at one point.
Yeah, that's where Frankie Edgar started.
That's where he started. Yep. New
Jersey, Rhino fight team. There's one in Jersey, one in New York. But he used to come by the New York one, they would cross train, whatever. So I walked in there. I wrestled in boxing as a kid. My grandfather's was a pro boxer. And I wrestled in middle school in Long Island. Wrestling's huge in Long Island. And I loved fighting. I was fighting my whole teenage, all my teenage years, even, just every day. That's what we did. We slap box each other. So I had a knack for it, and I went in there and I did my first jiu-jitsu class. I threw up everywhere after the class because I was exhausted. I remember thinking, holy shit, I love this. 4 months later, I had my first amateur fight.
So your first amateur fight was Extreme Challenge Trials, September 15th, 2007. Is that a Monty Cox event or is that a combat in a cage type event?
Oh, I don't know. There was a guy, Jerry something. He was the promoter for the league.
Okay.
But I remember, I think Alec Quinta was the main event on that card.
Yes. And you fought Julian
Pryzbylski. Wow, yeah, so weird.
And he was out of Wilkie's Warriors, I believe.
And he was 27, yeah. Or 26.
And you had 4 months of training.
4 months training, I was 17, and I whipped his ass. And I remember thinking, holy shit, I'm good at, I like this, and I'm good at it,
Well, you went to a decision. Were you throwing up? Were you cardio issues, or were you able to go right through?
Fine. I was tired, definitely. But I won, and I did great, and my parents were there, all my friends, I had like fucking 60 people there. Everyone's throwing beers in the cage. We were in the Rahway Convention Center across the street from the Rahway Penitentiary, I remember.
Wow.
And, I remember driving by and seeing the jail and being like, where the fuck are we? And Rahway was a very blue collar town, Rahway, New Jersey, and I fought under a basketball hoop in a gymnasium,
That's cool.
That's where it starts, man.
Yeah, and I remember thinking seeing all the guys that were ahead of me on the card that have been fighting, and wow, they're so good. But now looking back at it, all these guys, everyone sucked. It's 2007. If you were a blue belt or a purple belt, no one wanted to fight you. I'm not fighting that guy. He's a fucking blue belt. Now these amateurs are all brown belts and black belts.
Dude, it's crazy with 7, 8, 9 years experience. Yeah.
But it was night from then and now, man. It was back then, 2000, no one even knew what cage, people were just what what the hell? You know, that's when people really said, oh, you do UFC. You know,
well, here, did that fight, you're 4 months in, what kind of a high was it getting your hand raised?
You know, I remember like having my Rhino fight gear shit on and walking out, and we showed up with like 6 guys that were fighting, and I think we all won, or maybe one person lost. So we had a great night, and having my parents there, and my then girlfriend was there, and all my friends, the kids that I was growing up with, the kids that I've known since I was a child, like, and then to win, and you know, my mom was like, "Yo, you're fighting a 26-year-old." Like, she's like, "Are you crazy?" I was like, "Well, my mom was used to it because her dad was a boxer, so they were just."
And how old were you at the time? You said you were 18?
I was 18. I just turned 18 that September.
Oh, so you're fighting a grown man. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, you know, and I was walking around like soaking wet, 145 pounds. Like, I didn't cut anywhere. I remember waking up, I was like a half a pound over and being like, "Oh my God, how am I going to make weight?" You know?
If my math isn't off, it was actually 9 days after your birthday, the fight.
Yeah, so I just turned 18.
Holy shit. So from there, you go December 15th, you're getting right back in there. So I'm assuming you're back in the gym. Real Rising, David Duncan.
Yeah. And I loved grappling. So I was like doing jiu-jitsu like nonstop.
And you never wrestled in high school?
No, I wrestled 1 year in junior high when I was in like 5th grade.
And you didn't like it then, but you grew to love it later on, I'm assuming.
Yeah. No, I liked it. I just didn't give a fuck because I wanted to fuck around, you know? Wrestling.
Hey, not to segue too much, but that year in 2007, I think the Abu Dhabi World Championships was in New Jersey. You didn't happen to go to that show, did you?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, Miguel had me driving the bus.
Yeah, Mike and your promoter Arias were the bus drivers for the show.
Arias and I were the bus drivers.
that's
like, I remember one time Arias tells me, "No, man, I got to go do something." Arias, he got over on me. That's all I'm gonna say. You know, I mean, I've gotten over it, but my feelings were hurt in 2007 by him. so
he's a good guy. He's a soul guy. That's why I wanted to bring up that I knew him from back then. So anyway, go ahead, Mike.
So David Duncan, you win by rear naked choke in the first round. So you're on a high from getting your hand raised.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And are you a big ticket seller?
I was, man. So I had like, you know, a bunch of people in the crowd. Everyone's there screaming.
And were you able to stay sober around this time, or did you just kind of party and train?
No. Like, so I had yet to find opiates, but I was still like, you know, smoking pot and drinking and, you know, just like fucking around, other drugs, but not. And then eventually I found
heroin. Opiates. Yeah,
heroin,
opiates.
But painkillers, yeah.
So you wait till April 12, 2008 to take your third fight, Ring of Combat Proving Grounds. Why the layoff?
I don't know.
I mean, like you're doing quick turnarounds. Well, it kind of is right there. You fight Mike Morris?
I remember this guy. Oh yeah, I won that one too, right? Yeah.
You won by triangle, dude. You're smoking people.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that one now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Huh?
And then you have a real interesting run in November 26, 2008, New Breed Fighters 19, a title shot against a guy that would later become a trilogy with Robert Lawless.
Yeah, hysterical. I still talk to the kid. How funny is that?
Yeah, he's at a Dominique Urso's gym. He's actually a pretty tough guy. Went by Flawless.
Lawless.
Yeah, Lawless. So walk us through that fight, because this is something that is pretty important and pivotal in your life and like where you're at today.
For sure. So I'm winning the fight, but I got cut. Like it was like, but it was amateur fighting in New Jersey, and they were like I don't know if you know Nick Lembo, but he made the rules for UFC or for unified MMA, combat, whatever. Very serious commissioner, like nothing fucking got by him. I still talk to him today also. He was played a pretty big role in my career actually. But they didn't fuck around, shin guards, 7-ounce gloves, lots of rules. If you got caught, they were stopping the fight. So I don't forget what round it was in, but I got like literally like a little baby cut above my eye, and they stopped the fight. And they called it
So it's your first loss. How do you handle that?
But you fucking this little baby fucking cut. I was upset. But like then I remember they were like, look, it was a cut, so let's do a rematch. Then I got my rematch.
So that was March 7th, 2009. Now, Urso's camp was a little upset. I think there was a slight weight issue on your end for that bout.
What?
Did you miss weight?
I made weight for all those fights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have to go back to the scale a second time?
Man, how do you know all that?
Hey, come on, bro. I'm the MMA detective, bro.
Did I? Is that what you found out? Did I make weight though? I'm pretty
You
sure.
did. I think you made weight, but I think there was some issues with the promoter. There was, I don't know. I know they weren't happy.
I don't remember any of this, honestly.
Dude, this is Jarod. Here's the thing. We get a name, and I research the shit out of everybody, and I call everyone, like all of my contacts. We had Frankie Edgar on. He was doing the same thing. Like, what the fuck? But it is what it is. It's just like we try to walk through people's lives and kind of get into nitty gritty, because where you're at today, you're a few fights away from a title shot. But what got you there is something that's kind of the foundation of what the house is built on. So in this podcast, we concentrate on how fighters got to where they're at.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they were a little upset with you about the weight issue. You also won by, do you remember? Split decision. So what was the talk like in the locker room? Now, you lose one. He gives you a rematch, so he's pretty righteous about the situation.
Yeah. Well, we had it was for a title too, so we had a tiebreaker.
That's excellent. Now, you're going from, you're fighting the same guy 3 times, like right in a row. Like, you guys know each other. You know what I mean? Like, I always tell people, if you ever want to know something, like the best detectives, private investigators in the entire country is a fighter who's going to fight somebody else. They get all over their like social media. They're kind of in their head a little bit. They're working out real hard. So you guys decide to fight a 3rd time to settle the score. How big was this fight at that time?
It was huge, and I remember all my friends were like, "You gotta win!" Like everyone was back. Like everyone wanted to come. I sold like 100-something tickets.
Were you guys? Was there any bad blood between the two of you?
I mean, it was like kind of. It wasn't like we were like trying to fight each other, but we would be like grilling each other, in the casino, or if we saw like, or like, at the weigh-ins, all rules meetings, and he had 100-something people also. It's like New York versus New Jersey. So it was funny, man, looking back at it. But my friends are animals, throwing beers at their friends, like, they were fighting in the crowd.
And you're the main event.
I think it's the Showboat. Were we in the Showboat or the Resorts?
And there's very little information about the 3rd fight, but I knew it was with the same organization.
I think. And it was like a pretty cool arena, man. Like, it was like, in the casino is decent. They were fighting in the crowd for sure. But I knew his weakness was his grappling. But he was, no offense, Robbie, if you ever listen to this, I know we're friendly now, but he was juiced to the gills, dude. Like, I remember seeing him being like, what? Like, how does he look like that? Like an action figure, looked like Jean-Claude Van Damme in like Bloodsport, just like fucking shred. And I'm like a young kid. I never looked like that ever in my life. You know what I mean? Like, and I remember thinking like, what, my dad would be like, you're insane. What are you doing? But I think I beat him fairly easily that one, 30-27, right? Something like that.
Yeah. You definitely won a decision, but
yeah,
he's one of those guys where, man, you miss a day or two of training.
So I was getting high though for this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was taking painkillers at this point.
Okay, how'd you run it? How'd you make that jump? Were you hurt? They prescribed them to you? That's a lot of people's story.
And my friend was selling Vicodin, so I was at the bar and he was like, "Oh, you want one?" I was like, "All right." And then I remember like the following Friday we were at the bar again. Hey, you got any more Vicodin? Yeah, all right, let me get 3. And then I remember making weight for that third fight. And I couldn't put anything in my stomach because I was like right on weight. But I remember I was already dope sick. I wasn't feeling well because I didn't have any opiates. And I remember I made weight, man. I chugged a bunch of water and I chewed up like 8 Vicodin right before the fight. And the weigh-ins were like 4 hours before because it was amateur fighting. Like it wasn't the day before. So, I remember taking the pills and I felt like $1 million and I went in there and I won.
Now in Jersey, they'd piss test you though. Were you worried? I mean,
not for amateur fighting, for pro fighting. They test you, yeah.
Okay, I realize.
Yeah, Nick Lembo doesn't play around. Yeah.
Yeah, for the pro fighting they did, but not for. I never got piss tested as an amateur.
Okay, and then just for the record, they'll probably collect urine from every fighter and test a handful of them. So you could get away with it that way. But I was just curious how that played out.
Yeah, I mean, even if they did, I wouldn't give a fuck at that time.
Yeah.
Maybe they did, and I don't even remember. I don't know.
Huh.
But,
so you beat Lawless, October 3rd, 2009. Evan Chmielski, you win by Kimura.
Yeah. I didn't even train for that fight. Remember that?
You didn't?
No, maybe like the week before I got into the gym, and I remember the fight thinking, holy shit, I'm going to lose this fight.
Did your team have issues with you not training? Were they being vocal about it?
Like, I think they thought I had talent and they're like, oh, like he'll probably pull it off, or I don't remember really, man, everything's so fuzzy looking back at it all. Like, I'm sure like my jiu-jitsu coach who had like my first jiu-jitsu coach, Steve Williams, who I'm still close with him, great guy. I'm sure he was upset that I wasn't in the gym constantly, but I think he thought that I was good enough to win. So
yeah, a lot of times they'll come in and they'll say, no, man, you can't represent the gym, or so they try to put, turn a little heat up on a fighter.
Not our gym.
Huh.
Yeah,
so you took 14 months off after that. And then December 4th, 2010, you fought Team Vendetta's Robert Fabrizi. I remember him.
Yeah. Bobby Fabrizi.
So the fight was at 160.
I lost.
Yeah, and you had to move up and wait for that because you were having issues making 45 at that point.
Well, I wasn't even training. I remember the day of the fight, I was sniffing Oxycontin and Coke. Day of the fight.
Holy shit.
Fuck. Then at that point. I lost a split decision, I think, right?
Yeah, you lost a split decision. Yeah.
You know, not to, you kind of went off the, you went from one Vicodin to 3 to 8, and then you started Oxy and Coke together. It's like, you know, you're experimenting pretty hardcore there.
Aggressive disease, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
40 biking in a day wasn't working anymore. So I found Oxycontin, and that was way stronger, obviously. But I loved to, like, I wasn't shooting drugs yet, but I loved cocaine and opiates, or ecstasy and opiates. That was like another thing I did a lot too. But yeah, I was definitely experimenting. I wouldn't even call it experimenting at this point. I was doing drugs.
Yeah.
I was. You know?
Yeah, you were being self-destructive. Yeah, you were being self-destructive. You know, you got people in a gym, all of them believe that you've got talent to go somewhere. And I don't think you see the value in that like they did at that time.
What year was that, the Fabrizi fight? 2000.
Fabrizi fight was 2010.
2010.
And you had 14 months off. I wasn't sure if you had a stint or something like that.
My best friend died of a drug overdose. October 10th, 2010. No, he died October 12th, 2010. And I went on a rampage after that. And for some reason, I took this fight and I lost.
So you're a big ticket seller. You got a lot of support. You know, if you're selling drugs, you know, most of your clients are probably going to watch.
Yeah.
So did you ever mess up your ticket money?
No.
That's wild. That's wild.
Well, I had money at the time, so maybe I spent something, but I was able to make up for it.
You know, what's crazy is for Robert Fabrizi's sister, I think Devin handles the tickets for the CFFC, and that's the next organization you're fighting at.
Yeah, me and Devin are really close.
Yeah, you fought Anthony D'Agostino February 5th, 2011 at CFFC. I mean, they're doing a phenomenal job. They really are, man.
Yeah, they're great. That was CFFC Returns. Yeah, that was their first event that they had taken over the organization.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And they've done a great job with it.
Yeah, it's grown a lot, but even back then it was a nice like regional show, and you're making your pro debut on there. Is that, you know, how's the management of that work out? Is it because you're with a crew of known people still, or who's doing your management?
So at that point I was like, all right, I gotta get out of Queens. I met this kid, I'm sure you probably remember him, Anthony Leone.
Okay.
Fought in WEC, fought in Strike Force. And I met him. I had switched gyms. I was training at a gym called Mirror Jiu-Jitsu in Lower Manhattan. He was the coach there. And he was like, why don't you come up to Bomb Squad in Ithaca, New York? And, you know, you could like get sober. So I went up there and I just kicked cold turkey.
Oh.
It was very miserable. But I did it. I was sober for like 6 weeks. I was up in Ithaca training. You know,
now, was this before this fight or after?
This was before the Morrison fight. Or the D'Agostino fight, I mean.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
The Anthony
so
D'Agostino.
You got 6 weeks sober. Wow.
6 weeks sober, but there was like, you know, my training game was elevated because I was training with like a bunch of guys. Aljamain Sterling was there at one point. John Jones started there.
Yes.
Leone was there. Kenny Foster. Christian Moorcraft was there. He was in UFC. There was
Moorcraft, the heavyweight. Yeah.
There was a bunch of guys there. And I got good training, and I was sober for 6 months. So I took the fight on 4-day notice. I remember the coach, Ryan Ciatoli, was like, hey, you want to fight? One of our guys pulled out. You want to take the fight? And I was like, all right. And I remember I drove from Ithaca, New York to Queens. I slept at my parents' house. My brother, my older brother, just got kicked out of the house. He was shooting dope. My parents were distraught. I remember super snow. There was snow everywhere. And then like a couple days later, I drove down to AC or like that next night, I drove down to AC and I fought.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And I won by rear naked. I dropped Anthony in the second round. And I won by rear naked. And then I relapsed that night in the casino. I remember thinking like, oh shit, I won. Time to celebrate. And I remember sniffing a bunch of Opanas. I don't know if you know what those are. It's like a heavy duty type of opiate for like, cancer patients and shit.
Oh, yes. There's
Opana.
tons of overdoses associated with that.
Oh yeah. And I remember like the next morning I sniffed one and I had no tolerance anymore. And I remember I was throwing up everywhere. And that was it. I went right back to high.
Wow.
And I ended up going to rehab like not that long after that.
You never went back up to Ithaca?
No, I never went back. I hated it up there. Fucking freezing cold in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, fuck this place.
So I mean, an Intrepid, there is colleges up there, like Cornell is there, and Ithaca. You could get drugs up there if you had to. Did you try?
I needed to sell drugs to make money, so I had to go back to Queens.
I got it. Okay, that makes sense.
And there, so.
Well, after the D'Agostino fight, you take 2 years off.
Yeah.
Were you just running wild, or were you?
No, I ended up going to rehab like not too long after that. I met some people in the rehab. We left, and they showed me how to shoot dope. That's when I started shooting.
That's an upgrade. You've crossed another line there, quick.
Yeah, it's a death sentence, dude.
Yeah, and
for most people.
Yeah, so I ended up coming back home. My parents were like, look, if you're not sober, you can't be here.
Now, who introduced you to heroin, like shooting it?
These kids that I met in that rehab showed me how to shoot drugs, but I wasn't doing heroin. I was just shooting pills at the point.
I was gonna add, you crushing up, or are you shooting street heroin at some point?
Well, at this point, I was still shooting pills. You crush the pill.
Yeah.
Cool, cook it, and then shoot it. But eventually, I found heroin. But that was like a little later. The first, forget. I don't fucking remember. But I ended up coming home from Florida. I was down there for a while. Ended up coming home. My parents were like, look, you can't stay here unless you're sober.
So what were you doing in Florida?
Getting high.
Okay. You were just kind of partying. You weren't training. Okay.
Yeah. But I did find Blackzillians at that point.
Okay, so you were training with the Blackzillians when you were
down but like I was barely there. I was in and out. I would come in, I would train a little, and then I would leave. And it was at Imperial Athletics. This is when it first started. And that was like when Rashad Evans won the title and Bigfoot Silva was there.
I think Gillard was there at that point too.
Gillard was there. Anthony Johnson was there. Michael Johnson was there.
That's a crazy room.
One of the coaches was what the fuck was his name? Mike Van Arsdale was one of the coaches. Henry was there. Taiwan Spong was there.
Wow.
There was Buscape. I don't know if you remember him, Brazilian guy.
Yeah, of course.
Luis Firmino.
Yeah, Luis Firmino. There was Fabio Melo was there.
Well, here, that's a hell of a room. I mean, you're naming just all-star after all-star.
Yeah.
At any point, did they try to pull you aside and maybe tell you that you should probably take this serious?
No. They didn't care.
Yeah, I think yeah, it doesn't look like a real supportive room either there.
Oh, it wasn't.
I can't pick. I booked Bigfoot Silva one time. I can't picture, him being very, open of conversation.
Yeah, he wasn't ready to help me.
There you go.
So I eventually came home because I had like nothing going on, and I wasn't. Wait a minute. I think I'm going. So wait.
Did you ever get arrested in Florida?
So wait, 2011 or 2012? I forget what year it was. I got arrested for home invasion robbery, felony battery.
Okay.
And I was facing 25 to life.
And this was at this point.
This is at this point, yeah.
Oh God.
So I was in the maximum security holding cell, or maximum security holding building, and I had no bond. But I had no bond. But I lawyered up. Luckily, my dad was like, I got on the phone with my dad. My dad was like, look, this is the one time that I'm going to help you. After this, you're on your own. So he helped me. He got me a lawyer. The lawyer got the bond knocked down to $150K.
So 15 to walk?
15 to walk.
Okay. That's 10%.
Yeah, 10% to walk. So they let me walk that night. I had my first.
Did your parents, they put their house up or they put on a credit card?
Said they were going to put it on a lien. They put a lien on the house.
Okay.
But they actually never did. I found out later. They were like, my dad was like, hey, can you call the bail bondsman and see, like, to make sure the lien's off the house? So I called and they're like, oh, we never put one on your house. We just said that we were going to just to scare you. I was like, all right. So the night that I got out, I overdosed. I had my first overdose in the Hard Rock Casino parking lot in Hollywood, Florida.
So the night you got out, you had your first overdose?
I shot heroin. It was the first time I ever did heroin. Had my first overdose.
So, but not to get, and if you don't want to, but how do you get out of jail? Like they leave, you get your wallet back, maybe your watch.
I walked right out.
You go to a bar, maybe and say, I'm going to have a beer, and then from there, the wheels come off and you're shooting heroin?
I was so dope sick, I remember. And
okay.
I remember thinking I got to get high. So I went, I got my car, right? And I remember I'm speeding up Federal Highway to meet my dealer. And I get pulled over by a cop. I just got out. And I have no license. I have no registration, no insurance. The cop's like, license and registration. I'm like, officer, I have to tell you something. He's like, what? And I was like, I just got out on bond last night for a home invasion robbery, felony battery. I don't have a license or anything. And I had a crack pipe in my fucking glove compartment, I remember. And he's like, are you serious? I remember he's like, are you joking me? Or are you serious? I'm like, yeah. He goes, all right. I'll be right back. Stay in the car. So I'm fucking sweating bullets. I'm like, holy shit, I'm about to get my bond revoked.
Wow, the best thing was you were honest with them. I mean, that's
I'm
really
going
the
back-
best.
Yeah, I'm going back to jail.
Yeah, the best thing you did was be honest with them. I mean, that's the only way they're going to cut your break at that point.
So I the cop comes back. He's like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do for you. I'm gonna let you go, but I'm taking your car. You have to leave from here. I'm gonna tow your car. So I'm like, okay, no problem. But I was like a couple of blocks away from my dealer's house. I didn't give a fuck about my car, nothing. I said, take it. So I run. I'm literally running. I'm so sick. I'm running to the guy's house. I finally get there. And I overdosed. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I got high. I met my friend like a couple hours later at the Hollywood Casino parking lot. And it was crazy.
That's amazing.
So the next day, I remember my dad was like, I was like, Dad, I got my car impounded. And he was like, what do you mean? How? I was like, oh, I got pulled over and I didn't have a license. He's like, are you fucking joking me? Like, he just bonded me out of jail. And he's like, I'm like, it's over here. It's only like $150 to get it out. Okay, go get it. So I go get it. And I remember when I got in the car, the cop must have searched my car and he put the crack pipe and the stand, like all this stuff right on the center console. Just to say, like, yeah, good job, Dick. Like, fucking moron. And I remember, like, thinking, holy shit. So I'm running around down there. They put me on a nighttime, like, arrest.
So how'd they pick you up? Like when they first picked you up?
Oh, so
they picked him up off the Hard Rock Casino floor.
No, prior to that. You're right.
So when I got
with their hands.
Okay, so I robbed this drug dealer. So he let me into his house. I was with my friend Mark, who I still hang out with. I went to high school with this kid, Mark. And I choked the kid unconscious and I robbed him of his drugs and his money. But we made a lot of noise in the process. I jumped on his back, he faced away from me, and I jumped on his back. I put him in a rear naked, and he fell backwards, and we hit the door frame, and the whole door frame cracked. We made a shit ton of noise. Then we run out of his house. We get in my car. My friend's driving. He turns the ignition on, and he's flooring it out of the driveway. And the kid hops out from behind the hedges, and we run him over. And the neighbors heard all the commotion, and they called the cops.
Unbelievable.
I'm not sure, but that I think is what they call unmanageable, right? It's
definitely manageable.
Right.
So I'm like holed up in a motel. I robbed the kid for it was like nothing, like $1,200 and like a bunch of pills. So I go to a motel. I'm like, oh, I'm good. Like, I'll stay here for now. And I'm getting calls from blocked numbers, like the next morning. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to answer this. I'm thinking it's the kid or who knows. And they left the voicemail. It was a cop. And they're like, listen, Jarod, like, we know who you are. Turn yourself in. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I'm not turning myself in. So, like 3 days later, I'm in the gym wrestling with Michael Johnson. Shot Evans just won the title. Anthony Johnson was there. I remember Melvin Gillard, a bunch of other guys. Henry Hooft is there. And I'm wrestling with Mike, and he stands up, and he's like looking. And I'm like, what the fuck is he looking at? I turn around, and the cops are on the mat with their shoes on. And they're like, are you Jarod Gordon? And I'm like, yeah, you're under arrest for home invasion, robbery, felony battery. I was like, and I remember Henry was like, the fuck, what did you do? And I was like, parking warrants. I don't even know what I said, like some and they brought me to jail, whatever. I got out and the whole thing happened.
Oh my God. Have you seen those guys since then? Any of them? Oh, Henry. I mean, obviously you were, yeah.
But he's my coach.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Henry, but what about some of the other fighters like Michael Johnson?
Yeah, Mike, like every day I see Anthony. I see Tyrone. I see Melvin Gillard's not there, obviously, but
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those guys, like Anthony's had his share of, news items and stuff. Like those are real dudes, I mean, they'll probably just leave you alone.
They all have, yeah.
Wow. So you have that crazy period of your life. Yeah. 2 years after your last fight, you're finally back in the ring. So how do you turn the ship around? Because on February 2nd, 2013,
I went away for a long time. Yeah. I went to one rehab. I got kicked out. Then I went to this place in Jamaica, Queens, like a crisis center. I was there for like a month. I came out, started getting high again. Then finally, my brother's sponsor, AA sponsor, my brother's sober at this point, was like, look, Jarod needs long-term treatment. So I went away for 6 months to a therapeutic community in upstate New York. It's called Samaritan Village. Real fucking bloodbath. And I was sober. I got sober.
That's good. And I think that's what you need, because man, once you're into needles and stuff, you're in a point where you're very lucky your body didn't deteriorate, or, you didn't start to really have like that you're an athlete, some natural gifts and stuff, because that shit could take you down quick.
Yeah, I was still young and relatively healthy, so I guess I was like able to, not die.
The thing, Jarod, I think the most important thing, like anybody you just don't go to rehab and you get sober. It doesn't work that way. Like you've got to have brutal honesty. And the way you started this podcast, the way you said, hey, this is what I dealt with. The minute they came out of your mouth, I go, man, dude's sober. Yeah. When you're that brutally honest, no matter how painful it might be, it's like going to the gym. If you go there and you kind of mess around with the small weights, you can't expect big gains. Like you got to go in there and be brutally honest.
Yeah, sure.
So after 2 years away, you knock out Robert Fabrizi in the second round. Did you feel vindicated at that point?
Yeah, I was. Remember, I came out of treatment and I was like, "Yo, I want to fight with that kid. I know I'm better than him." So I kept asking him. Rob Haydeck, owner of CFFC, fight Fabrizi, not knowing that Devin is his sister. She works for CFFC. All this stuff. And I started training at Henzo's, Gracie's, Manhattan.
You were teaching there for a while as well.
No, I was teaching at Church Street Boxing.
Church Street Boxing? Okay.
But I met Trout, who I'm still with, who was the head coach at Church Street Boxing at the time. And Jason is like really who changed my life. My fight life. Like, he really elevated my career big time. Changed me, like, really helped me a lot. And he's still with us. He works at Stanford now, and he's like one of my best friends. It's crazy.
That's super cool.
He used to train at Duke Rufus's as a kid. He cornered Duke in a lot of fights. He's been around for a while, Jason, and a lot of people have won some prominent fights under him, some Bellator champions.
Yeah, you were with Rufus from 2018 to 2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, were there for a little while. Didn't really like it.
Yeah, I heard it's well.
Yeah.
So we've got you've got like an interesting footnote on your record. It's kind of difficult to explain. I think it may be an error. Duele de Gigantes, June 2nd, 2013. All right, so you fight in a tournament in Mexico. And it's listed, it's like once a month that you're there, but was that tournament all in one night?
No, it was one fight every weekend.
It was one a week. So did you just stay down there?
Stayed down there for a month.
Now that's not really good for a recovering, Mexico could be dangerous for someone in recovery. How'd you hang out there for a month?
I was with like a group of people, fighters. I was with some friends from New York that were also fighting on the show. And they had us in like a facility, like a fight facility, like up in the mountains. So there was no I could have drank alcohol, I guess, but there was no way.
What city was this in? Was it Mexico? Was it outside of Mexico
City?
It
was placed in a couple different cities. Some of it was in Mexico City. We fought in this place called Zampango, in the middle of nowhere. There was another place, I forget what it's called, some other place between Mexico City, and it was fucking insane, dude.
Oh, okay, so who's the promoter? Is it Master Vic Davila?
No, her name was
her name. And how did you hook up with this?
I just got asked by my friend, like, hey, you want to do this? They just asked me if I want to come down. I'm like,
what did it pay?
The grand prize was $100,000.
100,000, but pesos?
$100,000.
Oh, okay. Let me tell you something.
The reason I went was because the first season winner was Brian Foster.
Okay.
And I called Brian Foster, or I got in touch with Brian Foster somehow. I forget how. And I asked him, hey, did you get paid? And he was like, yeah, I got paid the week after I won, I got the money. I said, okay.
So, Jarod, I'm going to tell you that I'm really glad you were sober at this point, because any little shenanigans with an organization shelling out $100,000 in Mexico, it could have went sideways really quick.
Well, you mean like as if with that money, you mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been to a few events in Mexico, and it's...
They never paid me, though, so...
They never paid you?
No.
Yeah, I started to get that feeling.
You knew that already.
It's a friggin' podcast, bro. I got to try to build suspense, Jarod. Let me go again. They never paid you? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking. It was.
Did they pay you per fight up until this point, or were you just going out of pocket?
They gave us like $350 a week to be there. They paid for our tickets and stuff to come down. They paid for our food and for our, stay, but they never paid me the grand prize.
Okay, so Alvaro Enriquez from Wall Kick Muay Thai goes by Chino. It's your first fight in a different country. Are you a little nervous going into this?
I was a little nervous, but I knew that there's no way that he could have been better than me, Possible.
We're down there with Mervin Rodriguez and Mike Prokop.
Yeah, all those guys. Mike, I've been friends with Mike for a long time, and Mervin at this point. But
okay, so you guys were all cornering each other, I'm
Mike
assuming?
was my teammate at Rhino Fight Team.
Okay.
And Kenny Rivera also was down there. He was a teammate also.
Okay, so you got you three on you four on the card. You beat Alvaro Enriquez, knockout second round. A week later, you're at Oscar. Oscar de la Parra?
Yeah.
How was that fight going? Were you concerned about some hometown cooking as well if it went to a decision?
Well, Oscar was from Texas, but he was Mexican. But he was on Team America.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So like the first, I forget how many Mexicans or how many Americans won the first round. So I fought Alvaro, then I fought Oscar. I beat Oscar up pretty good. He kind of just he tapped the strikes actually.
Okay. Yeah, it's a knockout third round.
Yeah.
And then you pull into, a week later, June 15, 2003, Luis Gustavo Felix de Santos.
He's from Rhode Island. He was on Team America also. Super
Okay.
American. He's not Mexican, he's Dominican, he's from Rhode Island.
So they got all these Americans on one side, all the Mexicans on the other side, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So then you walk into the finals, June 22nd, 2013. Are you pretty beat up right now?
Yeah, I hurt my shoulder. I actually had to have surgery after that. Labor and repair, and I broke like a bone in my foot. My foot was purple. Like
going into the fight?
Yeah, going into the fight. I had to tape my ankles up and my feet up.
Holy shit. So Alejandro Roman, he goes by Uruguay. He's from Scrap Pack, Mexico. The only thing I can really find on him is that he was like 6-2. I found a couple fights online, like on YouTube, but not much.
Yeah.
Will you pick up the language at this point?
No. Little words here, and I mean I could understand what they were saying, but it wasn't like I could fully understand. I couldn't speak it. Like, I know some Spanish. Like, I grew up in Queens. A lot of my friends are Hispanic. I understand it. Like, if I hear two people talking, I could pretty much understand, like, get the gist of what they're saying, but not word for word, and I can't speak it.
How were they transporting you guys all together to these different events?
Pretty much. I mean, at first, I had like 2 vans, and then once the tournament dwindled down, they started flying people back home.
Okay. So with Alejandro Roman, how's that fight end up?
It's tiring. It's 5 rounds in Mexico City, basically, which is like 10,000 feet above sea level. Super tiring.
Yeah.
But I beat the shit out of him. Yeah, I beat the ever living crap out of him. They weren't gonna let him they let him go out on his shield, basically.
Wow. So in theory,
below both eyes, he was cut. He was a bloody mess when I was done.
So in theory, you're supposed to win $100,000. When did you kind of figure out it wasn't going to happen?
I mean, they were stringing me along, and then I just realized, all right, I'm not getting paid. Like, by the second week, I'm like, all right. At first they're like, yo, it's coming. We have to do this and that. And why, money coming from me. Okay, all right. By the time 2 weeks was up, I'm like, all right, they're not fucking paying me. I was really upset, though.
Oh, I mean, you're talking. I mean, that's huge.
Were you waiting at home in Florida or Long Island, or were you in Mexico still?
I was with my now wife. She was living in Florida, so I was back and forth from New York and Florida.
Yeah, once you left Mexico without the money, yeah,
I was never gonna get it.
And there's not management down there that you can be like, hey, I'd like to complain or check. You can't ask too many questions.
No, they'd laugh at you.
Yeah, that would be nice. It's like
a lot of times it's hooked in with like the tourism board, and they get like an allotment to, bring tourists or whatever, notice to, certain cities. And, they end up pocketing it. Yeah. Having lived in that country for a few years, I've seen plenty of that.
It was on TV for 4 months too, the whole fucking series.
Oh man.
Did you get to know any of the guys on the other team real well?
Yeah, everyone was nice, man. Everyone was great. Super nice.
Huh. Nothing shady with the promoters other than the end at the end?
Of course. I mean, like, the whole thing was crazy, man. Being down there was fucking nuts.
Wow.
How were like weigh-ins and stuff? I mean, it's like, are you cutting a lot of weight were you making 155 every week here, or
Yeah, I made 55 every week.
Okay,
so
that's a chore.
70, then cutting back down, getting back up, coming back. It was exhausting. My body was. By the time I came home, I was exhausted. Dude.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's a lot. And the travel too.
Yeah, it was horrible.
So you wind up. So Jarod, your next fight, October 26, 2013, CFFC at 155 pounds, Johnson Jajout. And the interesting thing about this is he's a member of Bomb Squad. So there's a little bit of history there between you guys.
I didn't even know that. He actually, when I fought him, he was training at some other gym in Philly. Brazen.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably, I mean, obviously you're right.
He was training with Paul Felder. And I only knew that because Paul left that team, started training at Daniel Gracie's. And me and him became friends because now we had the same manager. Rob Haydeck was kind of like managing us both. Whatever. So Paul had given me the lowdown on Johnson, like what to expect and stuff. Yeah. I won that fight by decision. It was a good fight.
Yeah, you're at 55 as well. So, I mean, you're steady weight, sober. But then you take 14 months off. Did you get hurt?
Yeah, I had to have shoulder surgery.
Were you worried about the pain pills and stuff?
So I wasn't going to meetings or anything like that. I wasn't doing anything to help myself stay sober. And I remember when I was told, oh, you need to have shoulder surgery, I was excited. I was like, oh, yes, I could take pain pills and no one can say anything to me. So I had reservations. I had the surgery. I remember they gave me the fentanyl in the room, like in the prep room before I went in. And I remember I was like, oh, yes. And then they gave me the pills to go home with. Took them as prescribed because, my parents and my girl were watching me. But then, it woke up the beast. And I started smoking dust. Started smoking angel dust. Loved it. And that's really insane. I would go to the Bronx with my friend Kevin, who I met at that long-term program. And I was hanging out with my boy. Kevin's dead now. I was hanging out with my boy Mike, who also was at that program on 187th and Jerome Ave, or 183rd and Jerome in the ghetto. And Mike would get us dust. And then eventually, I went back to heroin and crack, shooting crack and heroin with Mike and Kevin. And the fuck happened after that? I went away again eventually. And then I was sober for another.
You're blocking your mic a little bit with your hand.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. You can turn your phone on the side if it's easier.
Okay. Wait a minute. I think After I fought Jajout, I had a couple more before I.
Well, you had a canceled bout against Jonathan Del Brugge.
Jonathan Del Brugge, yeah, he pulled out of the fight.
Okay, that was the only thing I could find between October 26th.
What was the next fight after
that? You got Corey Bleekin.
Corey Bleekin, right?
He's at an AMA Fight Club. Charlie Brennerman is there.
Yeah.
He was
Okay, so after I fought Jajout, and then I fought Corey, I was still sober. And then after Corey was
Jay Coleman. Out of Marcelo Oliveira's school.
Yeah, I finished him in the first round.
Well, let's talk about how significant that was, because he's 8-0. You're, you're 8-0. He's 7-4, and like he's got a lot of hype behind him.
Yeah. Yeah, he was.
You went through him in the first round. You knocked him out.
Yeah. It was kind of an accident, actually. He went to shoot in for a takedown, and I was like stepping forward for like a body kick. Like I stepped through to throw a body kick, and he shot. And like as I brought my knee up, I kneed him in the face. It was a complete accident. I didn't mean to. I meant to kick him. I didn't mean to knee him. When I hurt him though with it, and then I got on top of him and I pounded him out, and they stopped the fight. I'm confused, man. I remember I went to rehab. I forget when I went to rehab, and then had these fights. I forget the order of events, but that's kind of how it went.
And at this point, I mean, you've got 8-0, 9-0 after this fight.
Yeah,
you're knocking on the UFC door. You have to understand that.
Oh yeah, I knew that. Yeah. And then they put me against Jeff Lentz.
Jeff Lentz, the CFFC title, May 9th, 2015. Jeff Lentz is an absolute stud.
Yeah, he was like well known then. He was good. He was on the Ultimate Fighter.
Kurt Pellegrino student.
Fights. Yeah, Kurt Pellegrino. Fuck, that guy's an asshole. And then that guy's
so Pellegrino, here, you lose to Jeff Lentz, Dr. Stoppage in the third round.
Yeah, so I was winning the fight, but I got kneed. I shot in, and he kind of stuffed it and threw a knee, and it just landed perfectly right on my eye and broke my medial orbital and my orbital floor. And I had to fucking have surgery. So I go to Atlanta. I forget what it was called, some hospital in Atlantic City, a really good hospital. I had to have surgery that Monday, so I stayed in the hospital, had surgery. I was in the head trauma unit for like 5 days or something. So I was winning the fight. I was 9-0. Apparently, I was going to get a UFC contract after that win. I was going to be the CFFC champion, get a contract. I'm on top of the world. I get kneed. I'm in the hospital. Doctors telling me they think I'm blind because I took x-rays and the nerve of my eye was sitting between the fractures. So they're like, when we see this, like most of the time there's damage and you're like, could be partially blind or fully blind. But we won't know until we open your eye. So I'm like, well, fucking open it. So they're like, all right, we're going to have to give you a shot of morphine. My parents are bedside with me. They're crying. He's a recovering addict. The doctors are like, well, it doesn't really matter right now because he needs to have emergency surgery. And we need to bring his pain levels down in order for the muscles in his face to relax to perform surgery and to get some swelling down before we go in there, because we can't do surgery unless, the muscles like, release and calm down. So they're like, all right, give it to him. So I remember they gave me the morphine and that warm blanket came over me. I remember thinking I'm fucked.
Damn.
You know, all that, like I'm about to win, go to UFC, to now you're never fighting again and you might be blind. And here's the shot of morphine.
Yeah, here. This will start the race for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I remember feeling that morphine hit me. It took 2 doctors to open my eye, one on my upper eyelid and one on my lower, and they were like digging. They were digging because, you know, my eye was so swollen that like the eyelids were like inverted, you know. And they opened it up and they were like, I was like, I can see. And they were like, all right, move your eye up to the right, straight up to the left, you know, in all directions. Yeah, I can do it. Okay, great sign. Very surprising. You're lucky. Okay. Had to have surgery. They put a metal plate. I have a plate that sits in my face like this. Sits like that. So on side of my eye and under my eye, it's like an L-shaped plate. And 6 weeks later, I relapsed on heroin.
Oh.
I remember I was like, all right, I'm not going to get high. I'm not going to get high. You know, they gave me a prescription to go home with. I took that. And then like 6 weeks later, it was like the middle of summer in Queens, New York. It was like 99 degrees. And I remember just my parents went away for the weekend and I was in the house alone. My eye was still a mess. I had double vision for like 5 months after that. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I could hear like the AC unit like making noise, like clink, clink, clink. It was like super hot, super. I remember like you couldn't even go outside without like sweating, you know? And, you know, I was just like, I was sitting in silence and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to get hot. And I called the guy I always called. He answered the phone and I went nuts. And then I was supposed to fight Andy Main. Oh, no, wait a minute. I was supposed to fight, I forget who. I was supposed to fight someone.
Hey, you hit a bunch. You like Adam Ward. You hit a whole bunch of cancellations.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I was supposed to fight Bill Algeo after that. I canceled the fight.
Well, the reason you were supposed to fight Bill Algeo is because Bill Algeo beat Jeff Lentz.
Right.
So they were trying to
give me the rematch.
Give you the rematch, yeah. And yeah, you obviously take a year off. You get Anthony Morrison, cheesesteak, Anthony Morrison out of Data's fight camps.
Well, just real quick. So I went nuts. Like,
okay.
I was fucking shooting coke and heroin all day, every day.
Oh. Dude, you're trying to kill yourself, man.
I didn't really care about heroin anymore. I just did it because I was addicted to it. And I would be sick if I didn't. But I really, like, my drug of choice became shooting coke. And best feeling ever, unfortunately. But I started having seizure. Like, if I didn't have a seizure, I thought I wasted my shot. Like, if I didn't shoot enough coke to have a seizure, I thought, fuck, I didn't do enough. And like, that's how crazy it was getting.
Well, I think your bout with Bill Algeo, was it canceled because you were maybe a little dope sick in the morning?
I was in the bathtub cutting weight that weekend of the fight, or that week of the fight, and Rob Haydeck and Jason Strout, my coach, are with me at the tub, and Jason goes, "The fuck's on your arms?" And he sees all the track marks on my arms. And they were like, yeah, we can't let him fight like this. So they canceled the fight.
Oh, it was embarrassing, huh?
Yeah, I didn't really give a fuck, to be honest.
Yeah, you know, if I could ask you, is it really, that not giving a fuck is obviously very powerful, but it, you know, at this point, you've won a lot of fights. You know, the CFFC is a feeder show, and that's the thing, is you had to have heard around the fight game what Mike said, that you got it. You got a little bit of talent. You could do things.
Yeah.
You know, are you letting some of those people down now in retrospect, or not giving a fuck? What how do you handle that? Because it seems like people gave you chances too.
Yeah, I definitely let a bunch of people down, made, disappointed some people, disappointed myself. It was sad, man. It was a sad time in my life. It was fucked up. It was a bad time.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, the guy that does our times, Genghis Conrad is his name. He was over at Henzo's, and he was saying behind that guy's back, he'd leave the room, and they were saying he's going somewhere. Like, that guy's special. Like, never to your face, always behind your back. He said that whole gym was going, man, that guy's a real deal. Like, he's going to be special.
Who is this?
One of the dude. He probably took 5 or 6 classes while you were at the gym. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So Anthony Cheesesteak Morrison, knockout first round. That's July.
Knockout. Head kick knockout. Yeah.
Yeah. Quick turnaround to August 6th. You're staying busy. That's a good sign. It doesn't give you a lot of free time. Dawond Pickney.
Mm-hmm. Rear naked choke.
With the rear naked choke, but he knocked out Jordan Steiner, or
yeah,
he was with Jordan Steiner. And did you guys ever spar, you and Dawond, or no?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I
Me and
figured
Jordan
you did.
together.
Right. Okay.
Jordan trained together a couple times.
And he knocked him out.
Yeah.
So kind of like a revenge match. And then you wind up with Bill Algeo. He's current on the UFC roster, Team Titan, Senor Perfecto. It's finally your moment to get the belt.
Yeah, me and Bill, that was he fucking really tried to get in my head. It was good. Made funny videos, all sorts of shit. But I beat his ass.
Yeah, he's a very talented guy in his own right. I mean, that is a world-class fight for any organization to pick up. Both you guys are in the UFC right now. I think this was the second time that you guys are supposed to.
CFFC 63, so you've been with them since 6 now, so that's a lot of maturing for an organization, right? Was this built for you as, hey, you win this, you're in the UFC?
Well, it was on the Dana White looking for a fight show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so naturally, okay.
We were the main event, so they were there to look at us.
Shit, they took both you guys. That's what kind of show they put on. Yeah.
Cool.
Good night.
Well, what was it like getting your UFC contract?
It wasn't really that exciting. I was happy, but they made me seem like a fucking jerk off on the show. Because Dan was like, "You want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got nothing else to do." He was like on the show, like, and it was like, he didn't really have much of a personality, but you don't need a personality to fight. Meanwhile, you don't even fucking know me. What did you want me to do? Suck your dick for 10 and 10? Did you want me to fucking get on my knees and fucking cry for 10,000 and 10,000? If I lose, I get 10,000, pay my managers, pay my taxes. I have like $4,000 left. Is that what did you want me to do? Jump up and down? I knew that I could fight in the UFC and I belonged there. So yeah, give me my fucking contract. And if you were giving me $1 million in cash, then I would fucking be happy. So like, it was funny. Like, he was like, he had no personality, but you don't need a personality to fight. So, but like, it's just funny to me how like people are like, yeah, Dana said you had no personality. I'm like, well, what did you want me to do? Like, you want me to fucking no? And then the next weekend they did a show in San Diego, another Dana White looking for a fight show. And the kid that they signed was literally like crying on fucking, and I was just like, this fucking faggot's crying. Excuse my language. This fucking kid is crying because you got signed to UFC for 10 and 10. Fucking give me a fucking break. I can literally fucking sell dime bags of weed and make that same amount of money in a week. Fucking don't give me fucking. It pissed me off because it's like I'm a fucking realist. Like I can fucking go work at fucking McDonald's and make same amount of money that some guys in UFC make. Let's be honest. And I'm not saying that UFC didn't change my life because it did, and now I really make a living now. But at the time, I was like, yeah, I'm excited, but like, what do you want me to do, Dana? Cry on your shoulder? So I've been holding that in for a while.
You know, like in my concern, like when I watched the episode, my concern was you got a guy battling addiction, and alcohol wasn't enough, coke wasn't enough, pills weren't enough, heroin wasn't enough, angel dust wasn't enough. Like you're the guy that's always got his foot on a gas pedal. And like Ian Heinich, we said, hey man, you did a few years in prison, you finally got your hand raised. Was it a relief? Nah, I didn't really care. It's just like, at some point you're gonna have to sit back and understand like what you're doing not only is special, but you've got to almost accept it as special. Because
fighting is like a special thing, and it's great, and I love it, and it's my passion, but it doesn't give me fulfillment. Fighting will never give me fulfillment. Ever. As a matter of fact, when I win a fight, I'm fucking pissed off in 3 days. All right, I need to do this again in order to get that feeling back. And it's like you win and you're like, all right, now what? But helping people, doing things like that is what gives me fulfillment. When I do something that like genuinely positively affects someone, then I could feel happy for a long period of time. But fighting is just a thing, man. It's just a thing that I get to do. I love it. It's my passion, but it does not and will never, ever give me long-term happiness. And if I put everything into fighting, like once it's finally gone, I got nothing. Like, it's like having a car. Like if you put all your it's like buying a new pair of sneakers. Like they're gonna get dirty in like a week. So quit acting like it's the fucking end all. I'm gonna have to do something else after this is over. So like this is temporary, and it's just a thing. No one gives a fuck about my fights. No one cares about fucking Conor McGregor fights. There's all this hype for 5-6 weeks, whatever, and then he fights and no one gives a fuck anymore. No one gives a fuck about Conor McGregor. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, it's an up and it's a high. Everybody describes it as a high, and
that's it.
As they go away. You know what I mean? And then you do almost find yourself chasing what the past. Chris describes it that way as a high. We've had Mark Coleman said it's better in sex. So yeah, you're in very familiar territory. It's very similar.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Jarod, I mean, you got a role in the UFC. We just completed your pre-UFC. The thing that I know this might not come across well, but like to be a true veteran of the sport, there's certain benchmarks you have to hit, and getting ripped off by a promoter is one of them. I mean, it sucks, but like you don't have 50 fights, but 50 Fight Club members all have that in their background.
Yeah, that's true.
So you're in St. Louis, you're cornering your teammate in Bellator. Who are you cornering?
Adam Borix. Kid's a stud.
That's good. Man, Jarod, sincerely appreciate it, man. I mean, it's just like I have a feeling that there's many chapters left in your story and they're yet to be written.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Seriously. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Stay focused, kid, because you do have talent. People go on maybe to overcome what you've overcome and live a happy life, but to perform as a peak level athlete, that's something special. And like you said, it won't fill you for the rest of your life and stuff, but it could be a good springboard for some real good things for you in the future too. So I wish you a lot of luck, man. And I'm looking forward to the second half of the interview, man.
I love this. I love the sport, and it's given me everything that I have right now. And it's my passion. It's the way I make a living. And, I'm forever indebted to MMA. I love it. But, like I said, it's just not the end all. So,
there's nothing sadder than watching somebody 20 years out of the sport. All they do is on their social media is post themselves fighting. It's like, that is your springboard onto something else. And it's like, they just keep getting caught jumping up and down on it.
Sure.
Everything going somewhere else. You at least have that forethought and understanding.
Yeah. Well, thank the Lord.
Yeah. A lot of experience led to it, man. Thank you very much for being so open.
Jared, what's your sobriety date?
December 27, 2015.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's a little over 6 years and 2 months or something like that.
Man, you're lucky to be on this side of the grass, bro.
Ooh, tell me about it. How much time do you have?
Dude, I got sober at 18, man.
Oh, shit. Good for you.
Yeah, it was fucking same situation that you were in.
So
childhood bullshit. Same
like
stuff.
You got like 10 years sober. What's
it?
That was a compliment. I said you got like 10 years sober.
Dude, I'm old and crusty as fuck, bro. I'm almost 30 years sober, man.
Fucking with you.
Hey, dude, let me tell you something, man. I got a kid coming too. I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do. That's my situation.
Good luck to you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I got 6 years from New Year's, and I remember actually, things in common. There was one time that they scraped me off of the friggin' Hollywood casino in Florida, that Hard Rock Cafe. I got carried out of there one time by my Finnish friends. So yeah. Anyway, brother, a lot of memories and very glad to see somebody come out on the other side. Thank you very much for the time, man.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. Be good.
So, Mike, Jarod Gordon in the books. Another one of those walks on the wild side, huh?
Well, occasionally we have to have those. You get a guy that's brutally honest about his past, his ups, his downs. It endears him to the fans. And I think we kind of owe it to our audience to kind of highlight somebody like that that's currently fighting, like the Ian Heiniches, the Eric Anders, Jarod Gordon. Those three guys, when you see them fight, they're our people, man. They've trials, tribulations, ups and downs. They've kind of experienced everything. So, yeah, I like to make sure those people have a voice on our program.
Now, I always like to hear the New York accent. And, he had roots with Arias Garcia and this CFFC up in the Northeast, which is a show that's dear to my heart. I always watch out for their news and stuff like that. And they've put a lot of people in the UFC, including Jarod Gordon. So Gordon on a 3-fight winning streak too, due to fight here in April. So keep your eyes out.
Yeah, Arias helped me a lot with the information as well. There was like 3 people from that area that I talked to. Arias really helped me with the CFFC stuff. They're on Fight Pass. Highly suggest you guys check them out. Any organization that's pushing it as hard as they are, deserves a little attention from everybody. Once again, I'd like to also thank a few of our listeners. Vegan Higgler is very active in our comments on YouTube. My brother Jimmy is helping us track people down, like Jarod Gordon. He kind of forced Jarod on us because his story is so intriguing. And, Fred Hammer is coming up with T-shirts for us. And, we're going to be sending them out to people that help our show grow. We're not selling these. These are only going to be given away to people that help this show grow. whether through comments or sharing. So, those people, gone above and beyond for us.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.